Hey there everybody, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but welcome to my review of the Porsche Cayman T. Ooh, yeah. That's right everybody, I have got a Porsche Cayman T for review, albeit for the weekend, and luckily the sun has graced us with its presence, so the roads are nice and dry. So I'm going to let you know what it's like to drive this entry-level Porsche model and see if it's any good or not. Now the Cayman does still share a lot of its DNA with the Boxster. I mean, they still use the same drivetrain and engines. However, it's only with the Cayman that you can get the hardcore GT4 version. Now I've got the Cayman T, which is one above the entry-level Cayman, and with this car you do get a few nice extras, but you also get some stuff taken away. Most importantly, the infotainment system, which as a no-charge option, you can actually have it added to the car, which is what I've got here. In fact, this particular Cayman T comes with 16 grand's worth of optional extras, and if you want to know what they are, please just check in the description below. But one of the big optional extras on this car, as you can probably tell if you're a bit of a Porsche fan, is the brakes. They are in fact ceramic coated brakes, and they cost over £5,000. So they should be bloody good if I was to take this on a track. However, I'm going to be driving on public highways, so I will be sticking to the law, but of course they're going to work mightily well there. Now that's enough of the outside of the Cayman T. Let's have a little look at the inside. Sat in the Cayman, of course, the first thing you find is that you're sitting lovely and low in the car, and you've got the perfect driving position thanks to plenty of adjustment in the seat, but also the steering wheel, which has both rake and reach adjustment, which is very handy. I have had a number of friends of mine who've been very eager to sit in the car, and they've had no issues getting comfortable, especially those over 6 foot tall, so that is something just to be aware of. The next thing you find is just the build quality in here is exemplary. I mean, everything is superbly well screwed together. And as I mentioned, yes, this particular car has over £16,000 of optional extras. So you have got things like leather on the dash with contrasting yellow stitching. That is an optional extra. And that goes along with the yellow seat belts and the yellow pull handles here, which replace traditional metal handles. But you know what, I really love that feature, and I would love that to be on every single car I own from now on. And in fact, I would just love to own a Cayman full stop. The next thing you find is just that everything's just where you would expect it to be. So we have got the infotainment system in the middle of the dashboard. As I mentioned, it is a no cost optional extra, because otherwise you would just have a gaping hole in the dashboard with a couple of shelves to put some items in. It won't really look very attractive, and if you plan on using your Cayman every day, then that's definitely an option you want to go for. And then we've got all the little navigation buttons just below for the media, the navigation and the home button, and you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with this system as well. Just below there you've got your climate control button, so you've got dual zone climate control. Now I have found with this PDK gearbox with the handle in park, it can be a little bit fiddly just reaching some of the buttons. However, once you get driving and the handle gets down to the drive position, you do find that you can actually put your hand around the other side of the handle, or the gear lever even, and access those buttons. So it's not a major quibble. I mean, it's easy to get around, but I know if you've got a manual gearbox, you'll probably find it a bit easier to navigate the climate control, especially when on the move. And then just on the center console here, this is very much the Porsche center console that we've seen now in a lot of models. We've got physical buttons on here as well, and as I mentioned, this being the Cayman T, we have got a button so we can put the dampers into sport mode. We have got the traction control button. You can manually lift the rear spoiler at a press of a button. We've got a little button with a couple of exhaust pipes on there, so it does make the exhaust sound a little bit more fruity. And then we've got your stop start button or start stop button for the petrol engine. So everything is nicely placed, and it's actually all got a really nice feel to it. This is actually, on the center console, the only place you're going to come across any hard plastics, but again, they feel of brilliant quality. I am hugely impressed with the Cayman, and I have driven a couple of other Porsches, albeit briefly, the new 911 992 and also the Cayenne Coupe. However, I didn't really get a chance to really take in the build quality and the feel of the car because I was on a track with a pro driver, and yes, I was focused on more important things like not crashing the car. And then we come onto the cubby spaces, which do surprise me. So the door pockets, they are of a good size. You can't really get any decent bottles or anything like that into them. And then there is this little area at the back of the door which actually has a little flap, so you can put things like a little beanie hat if it has been very cold this morning, and you can just tuck it away so it's not a nuisance. On the centre console, what we have got is a little leather armrest with a button on the driver's side, which is actually really handy because you can just rest your hand on there, press your thumb in, and it comes up. And on this car we have got wireless charging, so that is very handy if your phone has that feature. If not, there is a USB port there, so again you can connect your phone, have it tucked away and hidden, and then still use things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now the glove box, you know what, I'm actually really impressed with the glove box. Again, it's of a very decent size. It is lined with fabric or with felt. I should also say that's the same with the doors, and it is a decent size. It really is very handy. And you also have an additional USB port there. And then the pièce de résistance, I mean, it's not necessarily a cubby space, but you're probably looking around and thinking, there's no cup holders in here. I mean, how am I meant to have a drink, or, you know, whilst I'm parked up somewhere? But never fear, if you press this little bar on the dash, it unveils not one, but 2 cup holders, and I think that's just a really neat idea. Definite German engineering on that side of it. And what I do like actually is you can give them a little pull and you can hear a little noise, so it can adjust to different size bottles or cups. Again, very handy. That is just something, although it's a little thing, it is just something I've really loved about this Cayman. So we have got the little notification there, that is the 718. We've also got the analog chrono clock on top of the dashboard there. That's a lovely feature. And you know what, the steering wheel itself is absolutely stunning. I love the quality of the leather. There are no steering wheel buttons on here. There's actually just metalwork, and it feels again like a quality product. It's just lovely to touch. And yes, that's probably the only niggle, and I'll come on to that later on, is the fact that you haven't got buttons on the steering wheel. But again, if you're looking to take your Cayman to the track on a regular basis, you don't really care about buttons on there. You just want to grab hold of the steering wheel and focus on driving. But I am gobsmacked, I'm flabbergasted, I'm loving what the Cayman interior is like. Now I know this has got a lot of extras on there, but you know what? I pretty much would go for all of these. I do love the yellow, it works really well. I have got one niggle, and I am going to mention it now, is that you don't get yellow stitching on the steering wheel, and I just find that a little bit disappointing, because there's yellow here, you got yellow stitching on the doors, as well as on the door handles surrounding the speakers. But just, oh, that would have just been the icing on the cake just to have it on the steering wheel. It's a minor niggle, I know, but I'm just going to mention it there as well. But yeah, I'm absolutely loving the interior of the Cayman. Of course I would be. This is my first Porsche to review. Now, we've got no back seats in the car, so let's go straight on to the practicality side and have a look at the rear and front trunks or boots. So here at the front of the Cayman, we've got the front boot, otherwise known as the frunk. Now you can open it in 2 ways. Firstly, you can press a button just on the driver's side door sill, and that will open it up. Or if you've got it to hand, you can use the key, and at the push of a button, that will unlock it. And then you've just got a little latch, and it opens up to unveil 130 litres of boot space. Now, although that doesn't sound like much, it's actually an incredibly useful boot area. I mean, you've probably seen loads of journalists kind of sat themselves in the boot area. I'm not going to do it, I don't want to break the car, but it is incredibly useful. You could definitely chuck, I'd say, a kind of a medium-sized suitcase in there with no issues whatsoever, and probably chuck a few extra small bags just around it. I mean, to give you an idea, I have got my camera case in there, and even if I stand it up on end, you can actually find and see that it's still got plenty of room there. You can definitely put stuff surrounding the case, and it is incredibly useful. It is something I do really like about the Cayman. And you've also got things like a place to put your warning triangle, and there is a little light in there just to help you navigate if you are using it in the dark. But it's a very useful space. I was hugely surprised when I actually got to open this up and have a look at it. So well done for having a very practical little sports car, even if it is only 130 litres. Now that's the front boot done, or the frunk done. Let's have a little look at the back boot or trunk. I'm getting confused now. So here at the back of the Cayman, the same principle applies. So to open the boot, you can either press a button located on the driver's side door sill, or again, if you've got the key in your hand, you can press a button. And then when you open up the boot, or the rear boot of the Cayman, it presents you with 275 litres of space. Now, although that is more than what you get from the front, over 100 litres more, it's actually less usable in terms of large bulky items. I mean, yes, you can get a suitcase or a small suitcase in the front, but you won't be able to do that properly in the back. So what you have is a relatively shallow area. I mean, it is a nice square area, so you can put some small boxes in there perhaps, but other than that, that's really it. I mean, there is kind of a shelf which I've used to put my slider just above where the engine would be, so that's quite handy there. And then you just got a little bit of extra space for, yeah, a couple of small bags and little extra bits that you would use for filming a car. But other than that, it's just not as usable as the front trunk or the frunk. But at least it all adds up. And in fact, if you combine the front and the rear boots together, you actually do have more load space than something like a Volkswagen Golf. So it is relatively usable. You can chuck a couple of weekend bags in there, particularly when using the frunk, but in the rear this is definitely for much smaller items. You definitely can't load anything big and bulky in the back of the Cayman. Now, you do get a couple of little slider areas on the side of the boot area, which are kind of handy for putting a couple of little bits in there, but overall it's more the front boot you're going to be using if you need to load any heavier or larger items. But I think that's enough of the practicality, isn't it? I think we need to take the Cayman for a drive, and I agree. So first impressions once you get going in the Cayman T. Well, as you saw from the start of the video, as soon as you start the ignition, you get a noise from both the engine and the exhaust note coming from behind you. And it is actually quite visceral. It's a really lovely experience just to hear it inside the cabin. And then once you get going, the first thing you realise is actually it's a very comfortable car to drive. The suspension is far more compliant than I thought it would be. I actually thought I'd be kind of jiggling around and wobbling around all over the place and providing you with a really horrible thing to look at. But you know what? It's actually dealing with bumps and imperfections really well, and it's very comfortable. All my wobbly bits are pretty much staying in place. Also, rear visibility, or just visibility all round, is really good. Brilliant view outside the front of the Cayman. Your wing mirrors are actually really good, and you do get a really nice view of the rear arches in them. And then rear visibility is really good as well. It's only when you look over your shoulder that you see that you've got quite a pronounced C-pillar, but then again, this is a sporty car. But for the most part, it's actually really good. This is definitely the sports car you can live with every day. So the engine you get in this Cayman T is the same engine you get in the base model Cayman, and it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine producing around 296 brake horsepower, and you can have that mated to either a 6-speed manual or what I've got here, the 7-speed dual clutch PDK transmission, and it is absolutely lovely. Now, I know there's going to be a few of you straight away going, well, because it's not a manual, you're not going to get that purist feel and control of the car. But you know what? I absolutely love this PDK gearbox. It is so quick. Just driving now in normal, it's just going through the gears nice and quickly. You can't feel them, and you can barely hear it changing. And if you can't really hear it from, me talking, if I put it into manual mode, I'm in 5th gear now, drop it to 2 gears. That is really quick, and that's the national speed limit really quickly. 0 to 60 in the Cayman T with the PDK gearbox is 4.7 seconds, and you should be able to do around about 170 miles an hour if you really want to lose your license. So I don't recommend doing that in the UK, but if you do get the chance to go on the Autobahn, by all means go for it. But I really am impressed with the PDK gearbox, and you know what, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to buy a Cayman and they're going to go for this gearbox over the manual, because if you happen to want to use this every single day, this will be much more relaxing for you. If you have to do any long distance journeys, again, it'll be a lot more relaxing for you. And when you put your foot down, it just instantly responds and you just pull away. I'm a big fan of dual clutch transmissions, and I mean, yes, I'm also a big fan of manual gearboxes, but I've not driven the manual Cayman, so it might be something I need to speak to Porsche about, but I actually really like the PDK, and I think that if there's anyone out there that are looking to go through a midlife crisis of sorts, then they might want to go for the automatic gearbox, the PDK, because it is more relaxing and you got more access to that power instantaneously, because you just put your foot down and it's there for you. It is something I've been really impressed with, and at the same time you can just relax, let it go through the gears and do its thing, and you've got actually quite a nice relaxing cruiser. Economy wise actually is not too bad in the Cayman T. When I was driving it back from Reading to Milton Keynes, I actually averaged 39 miles per gallon, which is actually pretty respectable in what is essentially a two-seater sports car. So yeah, if you're planning on using this every day or on the occasional long journey, you do know you can actually get a reasonable economy out of the car. So what's the ride and handling like in the Cayman? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the ride really surprised me. It's actually a surprisingly comfortable car to be in. The suspension is really compliant, and I thought I'd be kind of wobbling around all over the place and you'd see my my flabby bits wobbling about, but they're not. It's actually really nice and comfortable. Yes, if you hit any rough roads or bumps or potholes or anything like that, it is going to really intrude into the cabin, but then again, on this Cayman T you have got 20-inch alloy wheels and not really the thickest of sidewalls, so it is actually very good for doing the odd occasional long distance drive. I mean, I drove this back from Reading, from Porsche HQ to Milton Keynes, which is around 70 odd miles, and I came back away from that experience feeling really good. I didn't have blood dripping out of my ears, my spine wasn't shattered, it was absolutely fine. The only negative to that kind of journey was tyre roar coming into the cabin. That was the only thing. Now, the unfortunate thing with the UK is we have a wide variety of quality on our roads, and in the blink of an eye you could go from a really smooth surface to a horrible piece of tarmac, and it can actually kind of ruin the experience. But again, it's something to expect in a car like this, because this is a two-seater sports car. Now next we've got the steering. Now of course, with all new Porsches, it is going to be electrically assisted, not hydraulically assisted, and I know again some of the purists absolutely hate that, but I've not really driven many older Porsches, so I can't really say I can see any difference or anything. I mean, I drove a Boxster a few years ago that I sold in when I used to work in sales, and this feels kind of just like it. I mean, it's got a really nice feel to it, it's really direct, it's just wonderful how just instantaneous the turning is and everything with this Cayman. I now know why so many motoring journalists absolutely love it, because it is just a joy to behold, and it grips really well. The mechanical grip is really good in this Cayman T. Another thing you get on the Cayman T compared to the entry-level Cayman is you get the little chrono dial, so you can go from normal to sport, which, as you don't know if you can hear that, just kind of blips the engine there, makes it a bit more responsive. You then got Sport Plus, which really does do the throttle, and then you got individual as well, so you can definitely tailor this car for when you want to go down the track. But I'll be honest, I've been driving the Cayman T in normal mode really, with the occasional bit in sport. I've not done Sport Plus. I'm going to save that for a track day if Porsche will let me. The infotainment system in the Cayman T is actually really nice as well. Now, as I mentioned, it is a no-cost optional extra, because as standard you just have a big gaping hole in the dashboard. But once you've got it in there, it's a nice clear display. The menu functions are easy to navigate because you've got physical buttons underneath the screen, and you've also got a little rotary dial to help you navigate the menus, especially when you're on the move. As mentioned as well, you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and underneath the armrest you have got wireless charging and your USB input socket. And then behind the steering wheel we've got 3 big dials. So on the left hand side we've got your speedo, and with the Cayman, as I mentioned, you can get to over 170 miles an hour in the car. Of course not in the UK or on UK roads. In the centre, this being a Porsche, of course you've got your rev counter, and on this Cayman T it does rev past 7,000 RPM. And then on the right hand side you have actually got a digital display. So whereas cars like the new 911 have got 2 digital displays and you can navigate between them, on this you got the one, and there's a stalk on the right hand side. Again, I was going to say left hand side. On the right hand side of the wheel you can navigate through the menu systems, and it does make it nice and easy to use. And although it is a little screen, it is nice and clear to read as well. So it does give you things like your trip computer. You do have a stopwatch for when you want to go down the track, a G meter as well, and then you've got things like your tyre pressures and engine temperatures, etc. So everything's really to hand. I mean, it could be a little bit confusing at first because you've got 4 stalks surrounding the steering wheel, but you know what, it doesn't take too long to get used to them. So with my time in the Cayman, I have come across a couple of little niggles I would want to share with you. Of course I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do so. So the first one is under the sun visors. You've got vanity mirrors, but you've got no vanity lights. So that's a little bit disappointed, especially if you want to take your wife or partner somewhere special at night and they just want to make sure they look absolutely gorgeous before they go in. I mean, I definitely need to make sure my beard is looking gorgeous before I go anywhere. So that's something that's a little bit disappointing, considering that the interior lights in the Cayman, although they look like tiny little bulbs, they're actually really powerful. Getting into this car at night and just kind of turning them on is actually really impressive. I really do like them. So it'd just be nice to see if Porsche can kind of put them into the sun visors. Now secondly, we got the start-stop system that you have on the car. Now with this being a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol unit, it's the same kind of engine you get in a lot of performance cars nowadays. It's kind of an entry level into this kind of sporting car. And what I have found is that the start-stop does cut in relatively early and can be a little bit intrusive, and what it does mean is if you want to get a quick getaway in your Cayman, it can be a little bit difficult to do so. So that is something to just be aware of. But you can of course press a button and turn the system off. And then finally we've got the handbrake on the Cayman. So it's not here on the center console. It is an electric handbrake, but it is underneath where the light switch is. Now it's not a terrible place to put it, however it does mean that you've kind of got to go with your left hand to get the gears in and then take it off, go to your right hand to disengage the handbrake. So that is something you've got to kind of get used to. What I would like to see is if Porsche, for the next generation of Cayman, can put the handbrake where this little, I want to say, is it a cubby space? I'm not quite sure. It's not the most useful of cubby spaces, but you could definitely put the handbrake button in there, perhaps with an auto hold at the same time, and that would definitely help you out in terms of usability and ergonomics, kind of putting it into drive, pressing the button there, and then away you go. So what are my thoughts on the Porsche Cayman T? Well, I think I kind of summed up the car on that last part of the video, but I absolutely love this Cayman T. I mean, it just drives incredibly well. It rides brilliantly, considering the fact it's a bit lower than the entry-level Cayman. You got those 20-inch alloy wheels, but I'm just blown away by it. Now I know people have said about this 2-litre 4-cylinder engine and how they've not been too impressed by it, but I've not driven any other Caymans, so I can't really give my own opinion and verdict on that side of it. So Porsche, if you want to loan me another Cayman, maybe the S, maybe a GT4, you know, if I don't ask, you never know, I'd greatly appreciate it to be able to find out how it feels compared to this Cayman T. But I'll be honest, I really like the engine, I really like how it feels. The PDK gearbox is an absolute joy and just feels wonderful. Yes, I mentioned that this particular car has got the £5,000 ceramic coated brakes, and I've not really mentioned them yet, but they're absolutely brilliant. I don't know if I would personally go for them on something like a Cayman. Maybe if I went for a more higher model car, like a 911 perhaps, I might look at it then. But on a Cayman, if you're going to be using this every day, unless you're using it down the track, you don't really need them. Save that money and put it towards another optional extra. But overall, I've been hugely impressed by the Cayman T and blown away by it. I absolutely love it. I could easily use this every day, and it looks lovely. It turns heads where I've been. I've had teenagers telling me to, well, I don't know the exact, they were doing that, which I don't know if they wanted me to get down with it or if they wanted me to, you know, rev the engine. I'm just not sure. But I've been hugely impressed with the Cayman. I do absolutely love it. And as I said, I have driven a couple of newer Porsches before at the experience centre, but I've not really had a chance to fully go through the cars per se, if that makes sense. This is my first chance to actually have a Porsche to review, and again, Porsche, thank you very much for this experience. I do really appreciate it, and I hope it's, you know, the first of a few Porsches that I get to review. And of course, click up in the top right hand corner if you would like me to review another Porsche. I was going to say report another Porsche, but no, if you want me to review another Porsche. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Porsche Cayman T, because I can tell you now, I've really enjoyed reviewing it. As always, please hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notifications icon to let you know when I bring out a new video. If you've got any questions on the Cayman, please put them down in the comment section below. And as always, I am on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I always advise that you follow me on there as well for additional content, including live videos and still images. And finally, I just want to say a big thank you again to Porsche Great Britain for loaning me this Cayman T. I'm hoping it's the first of a number of Porsches. And secondly, I need to say a huge thank you to you guys, because at the time of recording this review, I'd actually gone past 2,000 subscribers for Autobez. So I am really thankful and, you know, incredibly humbled by that at the same time. I never thought this day would come. It just makes me feel good in knowing that you guys want to watch a fat ginger bearded bear review cars. And yes, I know I'm a bit of a niche market when it comes to reviewing vehicles, but I'm glad that you've chosen to subscribe to Autobez and follow me on this journey of reviewing cars, because I am a big car nut. I love everything from super minis to supercars, and at the end of the day, what I want to do with these videos is just get enough information, or loads of information, for you guys to make decisions in buying a car. And that's kind of the key thing for me. Whenever I get any comments, and I have had a few comments from you, from the viewers, telling me that you've made a buying decision from watching my video, I feel incredibly thankful and humbled by that. And it's, yeah, it just, you know, it puts a warm feeling inside me, which, you know, I probably need to see the doctor about. But no, guys, again, thank you very much, and keep following for more content, you know, from myself with Autobez, as I can only, you know, as I can only bring out more and more videos as time goes on. So everyone, I'm starting to get a little bit emotional and ramble on, so I'll end it there. Guys, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm going to catch you all in the next one. Take care and bye-bye.